Hello, everyone. Uh, I was asked to keep this crisp, so that's what I'm going to do. And I'm going to share like 3 lessons in social entrepreneurship. Doesn't matter if you're interested in social entrepreneurship or not. It applies to general entrepreneurship also. But I love storytelling. And I'm just going to tell you 3 small stories. And at the end of each story, I'll just convert it into a small social entrepreneurship lesson. But you don't really have to know about social entrepreneurship to know about what I'm going to talk about. So in one slide, I'll visually explain to you what social entrepreneurship is. You marry business models and social issues. That's pretty much all you need to know about social entrepreneurship. You take the benefits of a business and you apply it to use in an impact. So before anything else, let me just start giving you the 3 stories that I came here with. And I'll give you the lesson afterwards. Right, okay. So lesson number 1. Always listen to the heartache. And before I get into the details of that, I'll get in the story of that. So I was a standard issue engineer. And the only reason I was an engineer was because my father was an engineer. His father was an engineer. And his father was also an engineer. We've come from a family of engineers. We thought it was a safe profession. Not sure if that concept exists anymore. Nothing is safe or unsafe. But I did my time in the traditional Indian career path and said, I'll be a design engineer. I worked at Tata for a long time and really focused only on that. I didn't have any love for it, but I did it like many other students in India. In the 2020 lockdown, when it was really the peak, and you really couldn't go out, you really couldn't get groceries. I had a couple who was my neighbor in a small apartment in Kolaba. They were Mr. and Mrs. Punjabi. This is Mr. Punjabi. Mr. Punjabi very quickly recognized, even without knowing me very much, that I'll be having issues getting food. So he used to ask his wife, Mrs. Punjabi, to give me a hot plate of food every day before they ate. And every time they brought me food, and as it increased over time, I used to be in this conundrum that how am I going to repay them? And I really didn't have an answer, and I asked this question to a lot of people that, do you have a suggestion, and do you have a suggestion? And all these materialistic answers came up, and it really didn't feel right. But then I figured out one resource that I have that I can give Mr. Punjabi, especially at that time in the lockdown, in abundance, which was time. I had a lot of time. And I had a lot of it to give away. And I started going over to Mr. Punjabi and Mrs. Punjabi and spending a lot of time with them during the lockdown. And very quickly, I could see that what was a disposable resource for me was a need for Mr. Punjabi. He didn't have an ear to tell the stories about his time during the partition, about how he met his wife, about how he was a bit of a playboy during his younger days. And all these stories were just sort of festering inside him, and just lending him the time sort of opened him up to everything else. So I thought to myself, there can't be just one Mr. Punjabi. There's so many elders in India who are living by themselves, like both of them, without kids or kids who've moved away. And turns out there's 15 million of them. So I thought, why not convert this into a bit of a solution where I find 10 people like me who love talking to the elderly, and I pair them with seniors, and let's see what happens. I really didn't think of it as a startup back then. I just wanted to see if intergenerational friendships, where you take someone millennial or younger and put them with someone 70 or older, what would happen? Would it happen that it would be exactly like me and Mr. Punjabi, or would it not make much of a difference? So I took 10 people, I put them together, and I sort of started the beta phase, and it was a huge success. The kind of impact that it was making on the lives of people who are just waiting for someone to ring the doorbell, waiting for someone to walk through the door and be there, not even saying or doing anything or having any activity, just being there and listening to them, is such an undermined resource. We really underrate it. And it's only when we get to that age when will we realize. But the beta was a huge success only because of 2 things. One, they really need this. And 2, the youngsters who came forward had that sensitivity and empathy in their minds. So we launched Goodfellows 6 months later. Goodfellows is now in 3 cities today. But the point of all this is not about how amazing this is and how the success story happened. But the point of this is going back to always listening to your heartache. Me, as a design engineer or mechanical engineer, whatever background I came from, had no valid reason to be acting on any of this. And all of you might think that, oh, you just came upon something that really worked really well, you felt passionate about, but we don't really get that. We don't really get those moments, but all of you do get those moments. All of you are getting those heartaches day in and day out in different situations, but you choose to ignore them. And I'll tell you why. Because they don't meet your professional backgrounds, they don't meet your career backgrounds, your educational background, or what interview you're going to give next week or your promotion next month. And I completely understand that, because in Indian society, we've been trained to be a one-track horse where we sort of mark out a trajectory and follow it. But if you're going to be a social entrepreneur or entrepreneur of any sorts, the best ideas are in the biggest problems, and in this context, in the biggest heartaches. If something is really pulling at your heartstrings so much that it bothers you, I would encourage you to listen to it, because you going down the path of trying to solve it might just be the savior that that particular issue needs in the community. You ignoring it might, in fact, have it go longer. You don't know. You might be the next person to fix it completely, but you don't put your mind to it because you don't have that mindset, that entrepreneurial or social entrepreneurial mindset. And I think the best way to have that mindset is to do a particular thing that a very dear friend of mine taught me, which is to experience everything through everyone else's eyes. And this lesson he has mentioned in so many interviews and so many things, and everyone always says, how do I become like him? But he's out there telling you, but nobody's listening. You literally put yourself in other person's shoes, be it in your personal life, your professional life, people you love, people you don't love, people you dislike, people who can do nothing for you. Once you start putting yourself in the people's shoes, other people's shoes, you know how they think, you know what's hurting them, bothering them, what problems that they have. And that's what will help you in your entrepreneurial journey as well as social entrepreneurial journey. So whichever one you choose, if you're not aware about the problems that people are complaining about, what is it exactly that you're going to solve? So we all need to get into the mindset of listening to the heartaches around us or the problems around us. And I did that with Mr. Punjabi. I had no reason to be there with him. And I had no reason to, in fact, do the beta. But I was just like, how does Mr. Punjabi see the world? Just sitting at his house, waiting for someone to ring the doorbell. And that's what led to Goodfellows. Lesson number 2, when you have an idea that you love, and you're going to hate this one, but when you have an idea that you love, tell everybody. Tell everybody. We as Indians are so married to our idea that we keep it so secret and so protected, and we think that this is the next big thing. Why should I share it with anyone? We have people who write to Mr. Tata and say that, when we ask for a presentation for the investment, they will be like, oh, but what if you steal it? And Mr. Tata's response to that is, then it's fine, don't send it our way. Because you really have to be liberal with sharing your idea when you have one. So when you have an idea, tell everybody. Because the true competition is not coming up with the idea. I hate to burst your bubble, but if you have thought of an idea, there's at least 15 other people across the world who've already thought of it, are thinking of it, or in the near short term will think of it. It's really not unique, or you don't get brownie points for coming up with something, and the competition is not in coming up with the idea. The competition is in executing it. The executor is the one who validates it, who builds it from the foundation, and is the only person who will be known for anything associated with that idea. So tell everybody, and imagine your idea like a big rock that you have, a big rough rock. And if you hug it tightly and protect it and don't let anyone attack it, it's going to remain a big rock at the end also. But you let people attack it left, right, center, give you feedback, give you positive feedback, negative feedback, trolling feedback, doesn't matter. At the end of it, that big rock will start to resemble somewhat of a chiseled sculpture that is your startup, social or otherwise. And when I came up with the idea of Goodfellows, the first thing I did was go on an Instagram live and tell everybody. I posted the pitch on YouTube even before the company was created. So I've done that with so many ideas, and it has led me to like-minded people, which is going to be your best resource. When you come up with an idea, you cannot go ahead without a team, and you're not going to find that team if you're going to clutch your ideas so secretly and tightly. So tell everybody, and I've been so lucky to find empathetic young minds like these, who I would never have come across, or it would have been taken me years if I was hugging and shielding my idea from the world. And the final lesson is the only story that matters is you. It's a bit of a mysterious one, but I'm going to show you 3 faces that all of us see on a daily basis on LinkedIn, WhatsApp, your parents tell you, or your relatives tell you, and the number of quotes that go with it. This is a little nauseating at this point to look at those 3 faces. It's like Bill Gates, Sundar Pichai, and Satya Nadella, and the many more. Even Mr. Tata's picture is always out there circulating with a quote which usually he doesn't even say. But that's a different issue. Are these really successful people? Absolutely, 100% yes. Are they inspiring? 100%. They are inspiring people. But should we be replicating the exact trajectory of what they did to become the next Bill Gates or the next Sundar Pichai or Satya Nadella? In a world which is so aware and so progressive about each other and the community and the society in 2023, I really don't think that we need another version of these people. And we Indians are very good at scripting the exact trajectory of how these people got there, and we do end up becoming the next any version of these people. But that's not the need of today. I think that your original scripts that you have been trashing and throwing out of the window is a really heartbreaking thing, because we need the first you. We really need the first version of yourselves, the first versions of people who care about other people, are sensitive, and come up with businesses which might not be social entrepreneurship but care about people. And profit and having an empathetic business don't really have to be mutually exclusive. And if you want an example, the Tata Group is the biggest example. For 150 years, they have been generating profit after profit after profit, one of India's biggest conglomerates, but it cares about its people. It creates wealth for the communities. It's always looking out for the country. So it's a misconception that to do good and an authentic story, you have to ignore profit. This question I asked myself as a design engineer sitting one night, that if I disappear today, what have I left behind? And the answer really concerned me, because there wasn't an answer. And when I say what have I left behind, I don't mean reputation and riches and fame, but more about whose lives did I impact? Did I leave a story behind that's going to inspire somebody? Or am I just going to be another 10 to 5 engineer who could be replaced in 2 days, which is exactly what happened when I quit? So it's a question that has haunting answers if you ask yourself today that if I was kidnapped, dead, or something worse, what would I have left behind? What will people remember me by? That's a good question to sort of center yourself, be the main character of your story, and figure out what is it that really matters to you. This was my life at Cornell, and I made a bunch of different erratic, unconventional choices, whereas my MBA batch was always in suits, always networking with the big 4 companies, and always looking for a job. And if I would have done exactly what they did, this slide would be filled with exactly me wearing 4 different color of suits. Actually 2, I have only 2. But I did absolutely random things because I wanted my story to be my story and not something that is conventionally going along with everybody else. I was on film sets where my best friend was working in LA doing the slating thing, which is an absolutely humiliating job on set. I started a motorcycle club with 7 motorcycles in all of upstate New York, and I played at bars for not money, but just for the heck of it. And now that when I look back and have all these choices and stories to tell, it makes me a more diverse person, because I feel like I am in charge of my own story. And choices can lead to undreamt places. When I started Motorpose, my first startup, it led me to the primary investor, Mr. Tata, and that sparked a relationship. When I was shooting social media videos for social causes on a 7-megapixel digi camera or Sony, I met my best friend of 10 years now, Sukrut. And when I was really lonely and vulnerable and I accepted it, I adopted the dog that you see here, Winter, who's still with me today. So I think you have to apply this to your startup also, that if your startup disappeared today, what would it leave behind? The answer for Uber would be they changed the way that we travel forever. The answer for Swiggy would be they changed the way how we have food or decide on meals ever. And that doesn't have anything to do with social impact, but they changed and made a big impact on communities and how they do things. So irrespective of whether you go down the path of social entrepreneurship or entrepreneurship, you should ask yourself the questions and always remember that your story will always be more precious than any replicated success story out there. And that does not mean you shouldn't be inspired by them, but stay true to your main character. And forget Chamaji and forget his beta. First of all, what is this patriarchy? Where is the beti? But I think we are way beyond that phase of idolizing our neighbor's son. Mr. Punjabi passed away last month. It was a very, very sad time at Goodfellows because everyone had grown to be associated with him, and he was the first senior that we had in a way at Goodfellows. And I remember 1 year ago when I took him to a Christmas party, he said to me, "This is the best day of my life." And his wife was standing next to him, and he went on to say, "It's better than my wedding day." And when I ask myself today, if I die or disappear, what have I left behind? I think I gave him the best day, better than his wedding day. So I think it's a good answer. I'm excited for all your stories. I hope all of you explore this and explore what is it that is going to be your story. And I'm sitting there, you're sitting here very soon, and stories that will change the world. Because the fact that you're sitting in these chairs and listening to people proves that you're onto something also. So do everything with kindness, sensitivity. Doesn't matter if you want to be a unicorn, a billionaire, make profit. It doesn't have to be devoid of empathy and creating wealth for communities. So thank you very much.